And hello, I'm here today with Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hey Ian, how you doing today?
Yeah, really good to see you. Now, Chris, you and I met, didn't we? Not too long ago now, but obviously it was on the subject of data, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I love myself some data, some people analytics, some workforce data. Absolutely. Throw it all my way.
So, yeah, Chris, so for the people that don't know you in the network, could you just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do?
Sure. My name is Chris Radvansky. I am the owner and principal analytics consultant with Rad Consultants. Really, we're focused on contingent labor analytics. So, those companies that engage with temporary workers, with freelancers, with contractors on a global or expansive level, they want to make sure that they have the insights that they need around their global activity for this type of population to make sure that they can make better business decisions going forward.
Yeah, and Chris, what's the background that you've got? Is it a data background or is it a workforce background or both?
Well, it's both. I've been in the contingent labor industry for more than a decade. I've been serving clients such as McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, KPMG, and then also we have a whole bunch of technology accounts. I used to be with a company called Pro Unlimited, which is recently rebranded to Magnet. And yeah, I was vice president of reporting and analytics over there and leading a global team, terrific team of folks. But now I am taking that skill set and that ability to engage with people and make sure that they understand what their data is, what it means to them, and how they can improve their contingent labor program. That could be through cost savings, that could be through efficiencies, that could be through managing your suppliers and on an ongoing basis. So
Yeah,
bringing all that data to light in a cohesive, insightful manner, not just rows and columns that you can get from any vendor management system out there, but something that's already built that you can just pop it in there and you're good to go. You can click to your heart's content. So these dashboards that we've created, people might say, "Oh man, another dashboard." But if you drive your car, there's been a dashboard in those cars for decades.
yeah,
So
yeah.
those dashboards, whether it's within your car or on your contingent labor program, are very, very useful. And therefore, we've built these in a way that can be digested very quickly.
And Chris, what's the state of the market at the moment? I mean, are HR leaders, are staffing organisations really harnessing data? Do you think?
They could be doing a better job, I would say, Ian. And the reason is within my experience, I've noticed that HR folks can kind of tend to lean on somebody else to really get the insights out. Okay, what
Yeah,
does this mean to me? Thank you for this
yeah,
data. However, what does it mean to me? And
yeah,
that's where
yeah,
we've been happy as consultants to jump in and say, well, this is what it means to you. And I'll kind of
yeah,
tell you exactly here's the bulleted list.
yeah,
However, the reason that HR folks might do that, and this is by no means all of them, there's a lot of really data savvy folks, but a lot of folks within the HR space are just not as data comfortable as they need to be, let alone data literate. Data
yeah,
literate, you can run into Excel, you can run into a visualization engine, and then bop, 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 you build something from scratch. That's not what
yeah,
we're expecting. We would love for all business people, whether it's HR, finance, operations, what have you, to be very data comfortable. Okay.
yeah,
And we are still seeing growth that needs to happen in that space. Now,
yeah,
Ian, anybody that reads the news or gets any newsletters that are out there, AI, 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 it's not stop. The next step from data is AI. So if folks haven't cleared the data comfort level, they're going to be really uncomfortable approaching this AI situation. So that's where I'm just impressing upon folks. Yeah, leverage me. Make sure that you bring me in to make it approachable and something that you can say, okay, I'm going to be more comfortable at a table if I can throw this word in there, if I can understand the data in from this perspective. But
yeah.
you need to start as go from 0 to 1, right? So you need to go from data comfort to then data literate to then all of a sudden, all right, let me catch up with what's happening in the AI space as well.
Yeah, so but how do you help an organization steer a course with this, Chris? Because obviously uh, every organization starts from a different point, don't they? And I'm sure they've all got different obstacles, right, that they've got to tackle.
Yeah. Well, because of my hyper specialization, which is again contingent workforce data analytics, right? That's a specialization within a specialization. If somebody told you, hey, the contingent labor industry, people might say, Chris, that doesn't exist. That's not a thing. So there's
Yeah,
folks out there, even within HR circles, that don't know that contingent labor is such a concerted effort, warranting conferences and different companies to be built just around that effort. So there's definitely some inroads that can be made there. But in terms of my capabilities, a lot of the contingent labor operations take place within a system. And that system is a vendor management system. So depending upon the level of experience that your audience here has within contingent labor, they might know, of course, I know that there's some major players that have a vendor management system, a VMS offering. That VMS is really terrific at sourcing workers, onboarding them, making sure they're being invoiced, supplier management, making sure all the suppliers are in there, they're compliant. When folks need to be offloaded after that 6 or 18-month engagement, make sure that they're done so in an efficient manner that is in accordance with how the organization is run. So VMS is really great at that. When it comes to taking a step back and being a little bit more analytical and saying, all right, let's aggregate this information. What does it mean to me? What decisions can we make because of this? If my rate exceptions, I have a rate card in there and I'm paying 20% higher for a certain role in a certain location, does that mean I need to work with my suppliers or my hiring managers to make sure that the level of skill, maybe does it come down? Or do we need to refeed in more current market rate information? So all those kinds of questions come to light only when you have that visibility. So that's really where I'm focused in on. The VMSs, again, they're good at operations, taking that step back, being analytical. They're trying to serve a lot of customers. They do it in a very solid fashion. But when you talk about analytics, it needs to be flexible. You need to make sure that this is telling the story that I need to tell. I'm a unique snowflake. Everybody thinks they're a unique snowflake, and of course they all are, myself included. And that's why we need a little bit more of a bespoke intelligence engine, and that's what I'm offering.
Yeah. And Chris, we talk about the obstacles for a minute, if you will, in terms of for organizations that are starting out on this and thinking, well, I'm really at ground zero here. I've got a VMS, I've got an HR system, I've got an ATS, but I haven't really got an insight platform. What are the obstacles that they're going to encounter?
Well, right now, it's a lot of it's around headcount and cost savings and budgets, right? If you want to have something that is built that is a value add, that is, hey, this is something that I can really see the value in. They would need to have somebody with the skill set to build that for them. Okay. And that could be a full-time head that they want to bring in. Maybe it's somebody that they're going to borrow from another part of their organization. So really standing it up is going to be kind of step number one. But when you stand it up, of course, that comes with some kind of associated cost. So that's really one of the roadblocks, I would say. The other one is the old phrase is garbage in, garbage out. I like to use quality input yields quality output. And that is around how are we ingesting the data at the onset, at the top of the waterfall? How does it start? And that's really where companies are starting to realize, listen, if I want to make better decisions, I need better data. If I need better data, I need to have better operations at the onset. And that's where a data management strategy is something that's critical. Having a chief data officer, even within a relatively small organization, is absolutely critical. And so for that reason, you need to recognize, yes, I'm going to have to invest a person or a leadership or a month and a half to stand up a structured process and communicate that out to my organization. Yeah, you need to invest in that. But every investment comes with an expected return, right? And there is a major expected return on structuring your data environment. And that's what I'm really encouraging folks to do.
And on that journey, Chris, I guess if you are in procurement or if you're in HR and you are trying to make a decision to go forward on something like this, you've got to be on the lookout for quick wins in some form, haven't you? I mean, what are the quick wins in this kind of scenario? Because obviously data itself, it can be a minefield, can't it? I mean, literally, the more you look under the hood, the worse it gets sometimes. So what are the quick wins you can get to?
I think that consolidating your information down, if you don't have a program in place right now, you don't have an MSP, you don't have a VMS, you don't have a centrally managed operation around this, the first time that you say, okay, well, how many spreadsheets do we have out there? Let's consolidate that down. And all of a sudden you have 30 different folks with 15 different spreadsheets. Like, wait a second. I didn't know we had this much activity. And you're just at the tip of the iceberg right there. So the realization that, wow, there is a lot of meat on this bone. There is a lot of traction that we can make by having this concerted effort. Folks within, like, the financial circles, they say they want to know, oh, how much are we spending on contingent labor? And if you don't have that centralized program, you're just going to throw out your thumb in the wind and hope that you hit the right mark. You're not going to, though. So as consolidating that effort down, then all of a sudden your eyes are going to be open to just your global spend, right? That's the biggest one. Like, how much financially are we spending on this right now? Right now, the answer is I don't know. In a month, that'll be at least $20 million. And that's a big jump. And then all of a sudden you go from there. So if you can save 10%, you can save some significant amounts in terms of your non-employee labor. So therefore, invest, start making the small wins. And then once you get rid of, I don't know what I don't know, then you can pull other levers around efficiency, around supplier management, around worker quality, around being intentional about leveraging your contingent workforce as a channel to full-time employees. So that all that kind of information, put that into the data, analyze it, and then make better decisions.
And what about compliance, Chris? Because obviously a lot of these decisions are really about understanding cost, implications for cost. It's about opportunities for perhaps different sorts of talent, more diversity of talent, by understanding those dynamics as well. But are there compliance aspects to this as well that data can help with?
Yeah, I mean, that's really, compliance is why the contingent workforce industry exists to begin with, right? If you need to onboard somebody, you better make sure that you're complying with the law of the land around what do we need to make sure that this person is onboarded compliant. What is the nature of the relationship between the worker, or maybe the staffing supplier, and the business themselves? Is that compliant with the United States, with the UK, with India, with Australia, with all the different locations that are now emerging within the global sphere around non-employed talent? So compliance is absolutely critical. It's one of the things that, we need all these PDFs, we need these documents filled out. And therefore, yes, the VMS can capture that. But from a data perspective, it's going to a little bit difficult to say, okay, let's measure every single individual. You can, but maybe the software needs to take a step up to make sure that that is just something that, listen, this is automated. This is obviously something that we need to tackle. But also with generative AI, there's companies out there that are emerging that are saying, you know what, we will do all the analysis of these PDFs for you. You have, let's say, an SOW, a statement of work, or you have, an I-9, let's say, in the United States here. And we want to make sure that they're populated for every single worker. Here's all the attachments. It's in this folder location. I don't want to go through it. Nobody wants to go through it. However, leveraging generative AI to do those things that nobody wants to do that will actually be valuable is something that is emerging.
Yeah, sure. And if I look at, from your experiences, looking forward now, Chris, what would your ambition be in this discipline within the workforce industry?
Well, speaking a little bit, maybe less specifically to analytics at this point, I really do see the skills-based organization as being something that is going to be driving the bus going forward. Why do I say that? Because companies are really, really focused on just getting the things that they need done. They don't care very much about the mechanism of delivery. Is it automated? Is it by an employee? Is it by a contingent worker that's serving many different masters? They don't care. They want to make sure that that project that they said we would get this done in the next 12 months, they want to make sure it gets done. Again, if they bring in AI and they do an investment there, that's what they do. But when it comes to people and project management and connecting the dots and things that cannot be automated, that's where these folks can come in with the skills, with the years of experience within the certain industry that they're in, and make sure that, okay, this company is able to do what they need to do because I assisted them as a worker, right? So I really think that the skills-based organization is going to be taking a step up. Now, from a relationship standpoint between a worker and an employer, from a loyalty standpoint, we've seen all the layoffs that, it seems like every other day we're hearing another company is having layoffs, and LinkedIn is awash with folks that are saying, hey, I'm open to work. And what's happening now is that these companies are saying, okay, well, we need to reduce our full-time employee counts and that's going to be a new high watermark.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, okay, great. Automate what you can. I'm a data guy. I'm a numbers guy. I'm moderately IT guy. Automate what you can so that you don't go through tedium. Nobody wants to go through the tedium. However, what we want to make sure that we're doing is leveraging humans to do those things that AI cannot do. And a lot of it is around connecting the dots, putting people together, relationship building, and understanding how one project fits with another and fits with another. Setting a vision for the future and understanding what goals should we set now that we've done all this blocking and tackling, as we say. Now, what else can we do? How else can we drive value?
Yeah, and are people asking too much of their VMS and their HR systems, do you think? So I think there's an assumption that, I've already bought one of these systems. It should do this for me already.
That's a good question, Ian. I think technology, people are frequently disappointed in their technologies, especially on a B2B basis. I'm not disappointed in Amazon, right? It gets done what I need to do in a relatively low state of complexity. However, if you give a mouse a cookie on a B2B standpoint, they're going to want a glass of milk. So what you see your VMS doing today, you couldn't have imagined it doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, right? They have grown incrementally as the industry has grown. But as you see one thing that needs to be done and it's not done within 6 weeks, 6 months, then you start getting a little bit perturbed. However, they're growing, but I do see automation, I do see AI stepping up and scratching the itches that haven't historically been able to be scratched.
Yeah, so do you think ultimately those systems will attempt to be, data hubs for the whole of the discipline?
Data hosts?
Data hubs, to provide this kind of umbrella view. Do you think they will evolve ultimately to do this? And therefore, isn't there an argument for some companies they could kind of just go back to their VMS provider and say, hey, why don't you do this for me?
Yeah, I do people will ask me, well, Chris, who's responsible for, let's say, contingent workforce analytics? And I've actually did a poll, and I found out that there's a head of an MSP that thinks the VMS should be doing it. There's a head of a VMS that thinks the MSP should be doing it. So there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of who's responsible for housing this data and making sure it is cohesive and insightful. Now, if you want my opinion, I do believe that the VMS, which is the housing unit of all the activity that happens within a contingent labor program, yeah, it makes perfect sense for that to be the hub. However, the level of scale that a lot of these VMSs have achieved, they need to serve so many different kind of customers. And therefore, their attention is on the compliance, is on the finances, is on making sure that they can grow and reach out to more hiring managers on a regular basis. And therefore, the initiatives that are important but not urgent are not being addressed as quickly as maybe a lot of folks would like.
Yeah, and I guess one of my observations, Chris, actually, when I'm in front of organizations, I'm talking to HR leaders and procurement leaders in this space, is that maybe they haven't really adopted the right habits around data yet, in that they don't have a habit of looking at data. It's not something that they really do. We see these quarterly business reviews and they're very much like PowerPoint driven very often, aren't they? So do you think that's actually part of the problem is the fact that there's a human aspect to this that's not being addressed?
Absolutely. I think habits is a terrific word to use in this situation. As people get more and more used to educating themselves on, okay, I should be doing this. It's one thing to say I should be doing this. You should be exercising. You should be eating right? It's like, okay, I should. However, unless you are going from that 0 to 1, the best way to get started is to get started, right? It also comes to a culture standpoint where if it is not, put into their brain pretty much at the onset of their employment, or say, listen, 2024 is going to be data year and we're going to focus on it. The culture at the top, if that is not saying, this is how important it is. This is the benefit you personally will gain from having a strong data environment, from having a strong data ingestion, from asking the right questions, and then also documenting the answers to those questions somewhere on paper, electronically, of course. So yes, that is something that needs to be implemented. So a culture of habitually habits bringing data into the fold.
And obviously closely linked to that is skills, isn't it? And there are very different managers around there, aren't there, that work in different ways. And of course, analytical managers are very different, aren't they, in many respects, I guess, to the boys and girls on the ground that have gone through the job, have been recruiters, and actually find themselves in a senior role now. Is it partly skill as well?
Yeah, and with technology, a lot of folks say, okay, well, we need to have coders, we need to have engineers, we need to have analytics people, and that's what they do. They should be analytics, so they should build these dashboards, they should build these reports, they should build these analysis, and then just ship them over there and say, let me know what else you need. And there's a back and forth. However, the uniquely human aspect of that situation is somebody that is doing the shipping. You're delivering this information because you have the ability to talk analytics. You have the ability to talk the business, and you understand what their goals are. Ultimately, my goals as an analytics person are relatively irrelevant. I want to make sure that as a client, and that could be internal or external, the client is getting what they need to operationalize and improve their department, improve their business, whatever the case might be. So it's, from a skills perspective, having that liaison is, I feel, the most critical, and it's also the most difficult to find. You need to hire somebody that has that technical skill set, and you go through an assessment during the interview process or what have you and say, okay, this person knows exactly how to do that. However, is the same conversation had with the same or is this conversation had with that same person about, okay, how would you deliver this verbally and also, via slides or via a memo, whatever it might be, to the ultimate recipient? Those are probably not being held within the same type of an interview process. And those soft skills is something that are important. We've been underscoring how important they are for the last couple of years. But now I really think that it's going to be that much more brought to the forefront. If you're that technical person, there's going to be a hell of a lot of automation in the place there. So that's where folks need to focus on their soft skills.
I know people are talking about data storytelling at the moment. Chris, what is data storytelling?
Data storytelling is really understanding your current state, any kind of a journey that has gone through to improve that state, and where you believe we will be in the future as a result, and leveraging data the entire way. I heard a quote not too long ago that you can't have data without recommendations. You can't have recommendations without data. And a recommendation is essentially a story that you want to be able to tell. Listen, this is what you're going to be. Once you get to the top of that mountain, you're going to recognize that your time to fill is X, your cost savings are Y, your rate exception percentage is Z, your percentage of candidates that are being hired to interviewed or to submitted is what Z, right? So you want to take all that information and say, imagine this state, and this is how we get there. The story is the journey. And the journey and the story, it's all data specific, it's all numbers driven. But again, it's people. It's understanding what is your goal as an organization, as a person, as a manager, and how can we achieve that goal, and how can we measure our milestones as we move along that.
Understood. So, Chris, last question. In terms of the state that people find themselves in today, if you are an HR leader or you're a procurement lead in this space, and you're not sure where you are in terms of your state of health with data, what is the thing for them to do?
Identify the stakeholders within your organization to say, okay, who's got the keys? And since you have the keys, how do you drive your car? Understanding your organization that much better, understanding where maybe people have complaints. Okay, if you have the keys, how's the car not running well, right? Is the tire gone? Is the engine falling out of the car, or is it just that the rearview mirror is broken a little bit? So understanding their issues, because you recognize how important it is for your organization to optimize their data nowadays, right? If you talk to these folks and you're, let's say, in a position to influence improvement within their organization, what do they need? Hey, if I needed this, what would you need from me? And then you have that kind of conversation. You find a cross-functional project where you can partner with somebody. You can recognize that, listen, your success is my success, is our success. And you find yourself as an advocate for folks that are driving the data behind your organization, and identify your goal. What is your goal? What is their goal? And see how you can meet them both together. So it comes back to people, it comes back to goals, and it comes back to taking one step at a time and not trying to, boil the ocean, as they say.
Chris, we're out of time, but listen, thanks for coming on the program today. You've been listening to Chris Radvansky. Chris, thanks very much for your time, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Ian, I really appreciate it, and great talking with you here.